It was just another ordinary day at a small, bustling diner, until one moment would change everything. The soft clatter of plates, the hum of conversations, and the sizzling sound from the kitchen were suddenly interrupted by an unsettling scene. A disabled customer, clearly in need of help, sat patiently at a table, waiting for the service everyone else was getting. But there was something different about this moment. The waitress, a young woman who had always been polite to others, looked at the customer with a cold, unfeeling gaze. Without a word, she turned on her heel and walked away. The tension in the air was thick. The other diners exchanged uncomfortable glances, unsure of what they were witnessing. Was this an honest mistake or something much darker? But as the disabled man tried to flag her down again, it became clear that the waitress wasn't just busy. She was refusing to serve him altogether. It didn't take long before the situation started to escalate. People began to murmur, some feeling uneasy, others growing angry. One man stood up, ready to confront the waitress about her actions. But before anyone could speak up, a familiar figure entered the scene, Baron Trump. At first, no one recognized him. He wasn't there for the usual glitz or glamour of the family name. This was a completely different Baron, someone who didn't want attention drawn to himself, but who couldn't just walk away from what he was seeing. As he calmly observed the exchange, something inside him clicked. Baron wasn't going to let this moment slide by without making a difference. He stepped forward, approaching the waitress with a sense of purpose that caught everyone's attention. The diner fell silent. His words would not only change the course of the situation, but might even change the way the whole community saw disability, empathy, and kindness. What Baron Trump did next would leave everyone speechless. But just as the scene reached its boiling point, the camera cut to black. What happened next? Was the waitress going to apologize? How did Baron's intervention play out? The answer will come soon, if you're ready to witness how one small act of courage can transform an entire room. Stay tuned, because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about compassion, justice, and the power of standing up for what's right. As the screen flickered back to life, the moment when Baron Trump stepped forward was burned into the minds of everyone who witnessed it. The waitress stood there, frozen, her eyes wide in disbelief. She had clearly underestimated the situation, assuming no one would challenge her, that her actions would simply go unnoticed. But Baron wasn't like everyone else. He wasn't there to make a scene or to garner attention. He was there because something inside him told him that this wasn't just about a momentary conflict. This was about something deeper, something that went far beyond the walls of this diner. He looked at the waitress, not with anger or judgment, but with a quiet intensity that made everyone around them take notice. The other customers who had been watching in silence now seemed unsure of where to focus their attention. Some had their phones out, capturing the moment. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure of what to say or do. The disabled man, still sitting at the table, glanced up at Baron. His face was a mixture of hope and hesitation, like he wasn't sure whether to believe that someone would actually stand up for him in a place like this. Baron took a breath, then spoke calmly, but with conviction. "You're not going to leave him without service, are you?" His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, a sense of authority that even the waitress couldn't ignore. The waitress, who had been visibly nervous, seemed to flinch. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The silence that followed hung in the air like a thick fog, and for a moment, it seemed like time had slowed down. Baron's gaze never wavered, and the tension was palpable. The other patrons, who had been too afraid to intervene, now looked to Baron as if he were their leader in this quiet battle for fairness. Not everyone was convinced. Some believed it was too good to be true. Others worried that it was just another promise that would never come to life. But then the first construction trucks arrived. Workers started measuring land, clearing space, making way for something new. And for the first time in years, the town had something they had almost forgotten: hope. Yet as things moved forward, obstacles emerged. Some longtime residents feared change, worried about outsiders coming in and disrupting their way of life. A few business owners resisted, skeptical of the new opportunities being offered. And beneath it all, there were those who believed that no amount of money or effort could bring back what was lost. But Melania didn't waver. She returned to the town, not just once, but again and again. She met with families, spoke at town hall meetings, and reassured them that this wasn't just another passing initiative. This was about them, about their future, about making sure the next generation didn't have to leave to find a better life. The town was changing, but with change came resistance. And just when it seemed like everything was falling into place, an unexpected challenge threatened to bring it all crashing down. Just when it seemed like the town was on the verge of a new beginning, everything took an unexpected turn. The community center's construction was well underway. Businesses were starting to apply for grants, and people were finally daring to believe that things could change. But then, out of nowhere, the funding hit a roadblock. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said the project had run into legal trouble. Others believed political opposition was to blame, and a few even suspected that it had all been a publicity stunt after all. The town, which had just started to feel hopeful, found itself teetering on the edge of disappointment once again. People gathered at the town square, voices rising in frustration and confusion. The mayor tried to calm them, but even he didn't have all the answers. Sarah, the single mother who had been ready to leave, now felt stuck in limbo. Ray, the diner owner, shook his head and muttered that maybe they should have known better than to believe. And then just as suddenly as the bad news had come, another surprise arrived. A press conference was announced. Melania Trump was coming back to town. The crowd gathered early, unsure of what to expect. Some still held on to hope, others prepared for disappointment. When Melania finally stepped onto the small outdoor stage in the town square, there was a hush. She didn't bring cameras or a grand production. She simply stood before them and spoke. She acknowledged the concerns, the fear that things would fall apart, just as they had so many times before. Then she reassured them. This project wasn't going anywhere. She had personally ensured that every roadblock would be cleared, that the funding was not just a promise, but a guarantee. More than that, she spoke about why she had chosen this town. It wasn't random. It wasn't political. It was because when she first stepped onto these streets, she saw something that reminded her of what America was meant to be, a place where hard work and community could rebuild anything. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she listened, clutching her young son's hand. Ray, standing at the back of the crowd with his arms crossed, let out a long breath and gave a slow nod. The people, once doubtful, began to believe again. Within weeks, the final approvals came through. The construction resumed, the grants were distributed, and businesses began reopening. The community center stood tall, not just as a building, but as a symbol of resilience. The town changed, not overnight, and not without struggle. But it did change. People stayed. Families thrived. A place once on the brink of being forgotten became a story of revival, a story of hope. And as Melania Trump took one last quiet walk through the streets she had come to know, she smiled, knowing that one simple gesture had turned into something far greater than anyone had imagined.